What if I told you that a hidden force buried deep within your unconscious mind is quietly shaping your thoughts, decisions, and even your destiny? This invisible influence isn't something you learned or chose. It's an ancient psychological pattern, an archetype, that's been guiding humanity for centuries without most of us even realizing it. It controls how you see yourself, how you react to the world, and how you relate to others, often in ways that feel automatic or out of your control. But here's the secret. By uncovering and understanding this archetype, you can break free from its grip, reclaim your personal power, and transform your life from the inside out. Today, we dive deep into Carl Jung's groundbreaking theories about these hidden patterns of human behavior, revealing the archetype you didn't even know was steering your life, and how awakening to it can unlock a new path to freedom and authenticity. Have you ever made a decision, reacted emotionally, or even formed a relationship, only to later wonder, why did I do that? You may believe you're in full control of your life, your thoughts, choices, habits, but according to Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, the truth is far more mysterious. Much of your life is being orchestrated by forces within you that you don't even recognize. Jung called this force the unconscious, and within it live timeless patterns of behavior called archetypes. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're active, living systems within your psyche that shape the way you think, feel, and act without your permission. Imagine your conscious mind as the tip of an iceberg. It's what you're aware of, your thoughts, desires, goals, but beneath that surface lies the vast, hidden part of your mind, the unconscious. And within this hidden layer, archetypes exist like ancient blueprints, quietly guiding your behavior. They determine how you see the world, how you perceive yourself, and how you relate to others. They are like actors playing roles in a script you didn't know you were handed at birth. Jung didn't invent the idea of archetypes out of nowhere. He noticed that across cultures and time periods, humans shared similar dreams, myths, and symbols. A wise old man, a nurturing mother, a fearsome shadow, a brave hero. These universal figures appeared again and again, from Greek mythology to tribal stories in Africa to modern films. Jung realized that these were not just cultural inventions. They were part of a shared human psychology, what he called the collective unconscious. This collective unconscious is like a psychic inheritance passed down from generation to generation. Just like we inherit physical traits from our ancestors, Jung believed we inherit psychological structures too. Archetypes are the inherited patterns of behavior and experience that have developed over thousands of years. They're like instincts, but for the soul. You don't choose them. They are already there, waiting to be triggered by the events of your life. So how exactly do these archetypes control you? Imagine you're someone who always ends up in caretaker roles, helping friends, supporting partners, even sacrificing your own needs. You may believe you're simply a kind person, but Jung would ask, is the caregiver archetype dominating your identity? Have you unconsciously internalized a script that says your worth comes only from helping others? Or maybe you keep chasing new challenges, striving to be the best, always needing to win. That could be the hero archetype running the show. It pushes you to overcome obstacles, but if left unchecked, it can burn you out or blind you to your emotional needs. In each case, these archetypes shape your behavior from the shadows, like invisible hands on the wheel of your life. The tricky part is that these archetypes don't announce themselves. They don't knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm the lover and I'm about to influence your next romantic decision." Instead, they operate through emotions, instincts, and impulses. That's why we often repeat the same patterns in life, choosing similar partners, facing the same types of struggles, or finding ourselves in familiar emotional traps. It's not bad luck. It's the unconscious repeating a pattern that it's deeply identified with. Jung believed that true freedom comes when we bring these unconscious forces into consciousness. In his words, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is the central idea behind individuation, Jung's term for the lifelong process of becoming your true self by integrating the unconscious parts of your personality. The invisible hand isn't evil. Archetypes aren't here to control you like a puppet. They are part of your psychological DNA, but they must be recognized and balanced. Otherwise, you're not living your life. You're living a script written by forces you don't understand. So the next time you feel pulled toward a certain behavior, relationship, or even dream, pause and ask, whose voice is that? Is it truly mine, or is it the whisper of an archetype working behind the scenes? This question is the first step toward awareness, and in awareness, you find the power to shape your destiny instead of being shaped by it. You are not just who you think you are also who you've yet to discover. And much of that discovery lies in the archetypes already living inside you. Carl Jung was not just a psychiatrist. He was a pioneer who explored the inner world like an adventurer sailing into uncharted waters. In the early 20th century, when psychology was still developing, Jung introduced a revolutionary idea that our minds are not only shaped by personal experiences, but also by ancient universal patterns that all humans share. He called this the collective unconscious, and it changed the way we understand human behavior forever. Before Jung, the unconscious was mostly viewed as a storage room for suppressed memories and traumas, hidden material that influenced behavior in negative ways. Sigmund Freud, Jung's mentor and later rival, believed the unconscious was primarily a space of repressed desires, especially sexual ones. But Jung saw something deeper. He realized that not everything in the unconscious came from our personal lives. There were deeper layers filled with symbols, images, and themes that appeared again and again across different cultures and times. These weren't random, they were archetypes. This was Jung's groundbreaking discovery, the idea that human beings are born with a psychic blueprint, a set of pre-existing forms that shape the way we perceive the world and ourselves. Archetypes like the mother, the hero, the shadow, and the wise old man weren't just characters in stories, they were inner psychological forces. They showed up in myths, fairy tales, religions, dreams, and even modern films. Why? Because they are part of us, built into our very nature as human beings. What made Jung's discovery so powerful was his understanding that archetypes influence us, whether we know it or not. They aren't memories or learned behaviors. You don't need to be taught what a mother is or what a hero does. You intuitively understand these roles because the archetype lives inside you. This insight shifted the focus of psychology from just treating mental illness to exploring the deeper meaning behind human behavior. To make this clearer, think of the human psyche as a theater. The conscious mind is the visible stage, but behind the curtain, in the shadows, archetypes are directing the play. You may think you're choosing your actions, but very often you're responding to scripts written long before you were born. Jung believed that until you recognize these unseen directors, you can never truly know who you are. One of the key examples Jung used to support his theory was the way people across different cultures had similar dreams and fantasies, often involving universal themes, a journey, a battle between good and evil, a wise guide, or a lost child. He also studied religious symbols and mythology from all over the world and found recurring figures and patterns. These weren't coincidences. They were evidence of the collective unconscious at work. Jung's work extended far beyond traditional therapy. He explored religion, alchemy, art, dreams, and even astrology, not to promote them as literal truths, but to understand the symbols and archetypes they contain. He believed that these systems carried valuable insights into the human soul. For Jung, psychology wasn't just about fixing problems, it was about finding meaning. Another aspect of his discovery was that these archetypes evolve with us. They don't just stay static. As we go through different stages of life, different archetypes become more active. In childhood, we may be shaped by the mother or the innocent. In adolescence, the hero or rebel might take over. In midlife, the shadow or the wise sage may begin to stir. Life becomes a journey of meeting and integrating these archetypes, not fighting them, but learning from them. Jung's goal wasn't to eliminate these unconscious forces, but to bring them into consciousness. He believed this was the path to wholeness, a process he called individuation. Through this journey, a person could move beyond a life of unconscious repetition and step into their full potential. In many ways, Jung's discovery was a map to the soul. He gave us a way to understand why we do what we do, even when it makes no logical sense. He taught us that human behavior isn't just personal, it's deeply universal, and by becoming aware of the archetypes within us, we gain the power to live more consciously, more fully, and more authentically. So when you feel an inner pull, a pattern you can't explain, or a dream that haunts you, remember you might not be going crazy. You might just be hearing the voice of an ancient archetype awakening inside you. And Jung's discovery is the key to understanding what it wants to teach you. Archetypes are not just poetic concepts or storytelling tools. They are powerful psychological patterns living deep within your unconscious mind. Carl Jung described them as forms without content, meaning they are universal structures that don't come with a fixed definition, but take shape through your personal experience. Think of them as invisible molds into which life pours your emotions, thoughts, and actions. You don't see them, but they shape how you behave, how you relate to others, and even how you see yourself. To make it simpler, imagine you're watching a movie. There's a brave hero, a wise mentor, a villain, a helpless victim. These characters feel familiar, not because you've seen that movie before, but because those figures are embedded in your psychological framework. They are archetypes, and you don't only watch them, you become them. At different moments in life, you may act like the hero, suffer like the victim, or inspire like the sage, often without realizing why. Archetypes are universal, timeless, and cross-cultural. A child in Africa, an artist in Italy, and a monk in Tibet might all dream of climbing a mountain, meeting a wise old figure, or being chased by a shadowy figure. These aren't just dreams. They are archetypal stories that speak the language of the unconscious. That's why Jung saw archetypes not as fantasy, but as essential building blocks of human experience. They shape our myths, our religions, and our everyday behaviors. So why should you care? Because archetypes are running your life, especially when you're unaware of them. Let's say you always find yourself trying to rescue people in relationships, even when it hurts you. That could be the rescuer or martyr archetype in action. Or maybe you constantly strive for perfection, needing to be the best, the most admired. That could be the achiever or hero archetype. These patterns feel like just who you are, but they are actually unconscious roles you've stepped into, roles shaped by the deep structure of the psyche. Jung believed that each archetype carries both light and shadow. For example, the lover archetype can bring deep connection and beauty, but also obsession and dependency. The warrior can bring courage and strength, but also aggression and destruction. When you're unconscious of an archetype, you're at its mercy. It controls you, but when you become conscious of it, you can work with its energy wisely. One of the most dominant archetypes is the persona, the mask you wear in society. It helps you function in the world, but it can also trap you. Maybe you've become the good girl, the tough guy, or the funny one. These roles may serve you socially, but they often bury your true self. That's why people sometimes feel hollow or fake, because their real emotions are being filtered through an unconscious archetypal role they feel obligated to play. Then there's the shadow, the part of you that contains all the traits you reject or deny. It holds your anger, jealousy, fears, and shame, but also your creativity, power, and potential. When ignored, the shadow leaks out in destructive ways, self-sabotage, projection, or emotional explosions. But when embraced, it becomes a source of depth and authenticity. Recognizing archetypes in your life is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, your patterns make sense. You realize that your repeated mistakes, emotional triggers, or unexplainable dreams aren't random. They're messages from within, clues from the deeper self, asking to be understood. This awareness doesn't mean you'll never struggle again, but it does mean you'll suffer less blindly. You'll be able to say, I see the hero is overworking me again, or my inner child is seeking comfort in the wrong places. That insight gives you a choice, and choice is the foundation of freedom. In practical terms, understanding archetypes can improve your relationships, clarify your purpose, and deepen your creativity. Writers, artists, and leaders all use archetypes, sometimes intuitively, to connect with others on a deeper level. But the real power lies in using them for personal transformation. Jung saw this as the path of individuation, becoming whole by integrating every part of yourself, including the parts you've ignored. In the end, archetypes are not rules. They are invitations. They ask you to explore the full range of your humanity. You are not just one thing. You are a universe of patterns waiting to be discovered. And once you begin to recognize these archetypes in your life, you'll see them everywhere, in your dreams, your fears, your relationships, and your desires. Understanding archetypes is the key to understanding yourself. And once you do that, you stop living someone else's script and start writing your own. You wake up, brush your teeth, check your phone, and go about your day, believing you are consciously making every decision. But Carl Jung would argue that much of what you do is not chosen by your conscious self. It's driven by a hidden part of your mind called the unconscious. Just like a computer has an operating system running behind the screen, your unconscious is the background software of your personality, always active, always influencing you, but rarely seen. To Jung, the unconscious wasn't just a personal memory vault of forgotten experiences or repressed trauma, as Freud believed. It was a rich, multi-layered realm filled with symbols, emotions, instincts, and archetypes. He divided it into two main parts: the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. The personal unconscious is made up of experiences unique to you, memories you've forgotten, feelings you've denied, aspects of yourself you've rejected. For example, if you were told as a child to stop being so emotional, you might bury that emotional side deep within you. Later in life, that buried trait might emerge unexpectedly through anxiety, dreams, or sudden emotional reactions. That's the personal unconscious at work, expressing parts of yourself you've tried to ignore. But Jung didn't stop there. He believed that beneath your personal unconscious lies something even deeper, the collective unconscious. This is where the archetypes live. Unlike personal memories, these aren't shaped by your individual life. They are inherited patterns shared by all of humanity. They are ancient and universal, guiding your instincts and imagination. You didn't invent the idea of a hero, mother, or shadow. These symbols already exist within you. That's why people from completely different cultures and eras tell similar stories and dream similar dreams. The collective unconscious unites us on a psychological level. You might think of the unconscious as a dark, mysterious place, but Jung saw it differently. He believed it was a source of wisdom, creativity, and healing. Yes, it contains things you've pushed away or forgotten, but it also holds the missing pieces of your true self, the parts you need to become whole. The unconscious doesn't speak in plain language. It communicates through symbols, dreams, intuition, and emotional reactions. When you have a powerful dream or an irrational fear, your unconscious might be trying to tell you something. If you keep having the same argument with different people or repeating the same toxic relationship patterns, it's not just bad luck. It's your unconscious acting out a story you haven't yet understood. One of the key forces within the unconscious is projection. Jung believed that we often see parts of ourselves, especially the rejected parts, reflected in other people. If someone irritates you for being arrogant, for example, it might be because you've disowned your own assertiveness or confidence. Your unconscious projects that trait onto someone else so you can deal with it from a safe distance. That's why relationships are such powerful mirrors. They show us what we can't or won't see in ourselves. This is why Jung stressed the importance of becoming conscious of your unconscious. Until you do, you're not truly free. You're acting out old patterns trapped by inner forces you don't understand. As Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. How can you access this hidden world? Jung encouraged practices like dream analysis, active imagination, and shadow work. He believed that by observing your dreams and paying attention to your emotional triggers, you could begin to recognize the symbols and messages from your unconscious. Over time, these insights help you see yourself more clearly, break unhealthy cycles, and unlock creative and spiritual growth. Think of your unconscious as a forgotten room in your house. Dark, dusty, maybe a little scary, but inside that room are treasures, your unrealized potential, your intuition, your creative fire. To ignore the unconscious is to live in just one small part of yourself, but to engage with it is to begin the journey toward psychological wholeness, a process Jung called individuation. In our modern world, we tend to value logic, productivity, and conscious control. But Jung reminds us that the unconscious mind is not an enemy to be feared. It is a partner in our growth. It holds the keys to who we truly are. When you stop running from your unconscious and start listening to it, you begin to understand your emotions, your patterns, and your purpose on a much deeper level. And that's when transformation begins, not by adding something new, but by rediscovering what was already there, waiting for you to look within. Deep inside every human being is a side we rarely acknowledge, let alone show the world. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of you made up of everything you deny, suppress, or reject. It includes your darkest impulses, your hidden fears, your jealousy, your rage, but also your unexplored strengths, talents, and desires. The shadow is not evil, it's simply unconscious, and until you face it, it will quietly control your life. Jung believed that the shadow begins to form in early childhood. As you're taught what is good, acceptable, or appropriate, you start pushing away anything that doesn't fit that mold. Were you punished for crying? Then emotional vulnerability goes into the shadow. Were you laughed at for speaking up? Then confidence might get buried too. Over time, the shadow becomes a psychological basement full of everything you've disowned. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It leaks out in subtle and sometimes destructive ways. It shows up as projection, blaming others for traits you won't admit in yourself. For example, if you accuse someone of being selfish, it might be your own denied selfishness talking. If you always see arrogance in others, perhaps you're not owning your desire to stand tall and be seen. This is the shadow in action, pulling your strings from behind the curtain. Ignoring the shadow can lead to a false identity. You begin to believe you're only your positive qualities, kind, selfless, patient, while pushing your anger, ambition, or fear into exile. This creates a split between who you really are and who you think you are. And the bigger that gap grows, the more emotionally unstable life becomes. You might find yourself having outbursts, engaging in self-sabotage, or feeling drawn to toxic relationships and not understanding why. But here's the paradox Jung discovered. The shadow is not just a problem, it's a gift. Inside the shadow lies raw, untamed energy. It's where your creativity lives. It's the source of your courage, your boundaries, and your authenticity. The goal is not to fix the shadow or get rid of it. The goal is to bring it into the light, to integrate it into your conscious self. That integration process starts with awareness. When something triggers you emotionally, when you overreact, get offended, or feel judgmental, pause. Ask yourself, what part of me am I seeing in this person or situation? Often the thing that bothers you most in others is something unclaimed in yourself. This kind of self-inquiry is uncomfortable, but it's also deeply transformative. Another way to meet your shadow is through dreams. Jung believed that the shadow often appears in dreams as dark figures threatening animals or chaotic situations. These are not nightmares to fear, they are messages from the unconscious, pointing to parts of you that want to be acknowledged. The more you ignore these dream figures, the more loudly they scream for your attention. Shadow work doesn't mean you become a darker person. It means you become a whole person. You stop running from yourself. You stop pretending. And that honesty brings a deep sense of inner peace. You no longer have to maintain a false image or prove you're good enough because you've made peace with the parts of yourself you once judged. In society, we often shame people for expressing their shadow. Anger is labeled toxic. Fear is seen as weakness. Power is viewed with suspicion. But Jung saw these emotions as neutral forces. They become destructive only when ignored or misused. Anger, for example, can set boundaries. Fear can offer protection. Power can inspire action. The key is learning to work with these forces instead of pretending they don't exist. Jung also warned that the more unconscious your shadow remains, the more likely you are to project it onto others. This is why conflict arises, not just in relationships, but between groups, religions, and even nations. We fight what we refuse to see in ourselves. That's why shadow work isn't just personal, it's also collective healing. As individuals integrate their shadows, the world becomes less divided, less reactive, and more compassionate. Ultimately, meeting your shadow is an act of courage. It's choosing to face what you've hidden, not to punish yourself, but to reclaim your power. The parts of you that feel ugly, embarrassing, or unacceptable are often the exact parts that hold your voice, your vision, and your potential. Carl Jung's message is clear. You are not only the light, you are also the darkness. And until you embrace both, you will never fully know who you are. The shadow, once feared, becomes your greatest ally. Because when you make peace with the parts of yourself you were taught to hate, you don't just heal, you transform. Imagine walking into a room full of strangers. Instantly you straighten your posture, put on a smile, and act a little differently than you would alone. That subtle shift is your persona at work. Carl Jung described the persona as the mask we wear to interact with the outer world, a socially acceptable version of ourselves designed to meet expectations, fit in, and protect our deeper identity. It's not fake, it's functional. But the danger lies in mistaking the mask for the real self. The word persona comes from Latin meaning mask, like the ones worn by actors in ancient theater. And just like in a play, the persona helps you play certain roles. The polite employee, the cool friend, the strong parent, the helpful student. These roles aren't bad. In fact, they're necessary. We all need a social identity to function in society. But over time, the persona can become too rigid. Instead of being a tool, it becomes a prison. Jung believed that we start building our persona in childhood. To gain approval, avoid punishment, or simply survive, we learn which behaviors are rewarded and which are rejected. A child who is praised for being quiet and obedient may learn to hide their bold, rebellious side. A boy told to man up might bury his sensitivity. As the years go by, we start to forget that these adaptations were choices. We think they are simply who we are. The problem is that the persona rarely reflects the full truth of a person. It highlights the parts of us that are easiest to accept and hides the rest. Over time, this creates a split between your true self and your social self. You may feel confident on the outside, but hollow inside. You may laugh with others while secretly battling sadness. This gap between appearance and reality leads to feelings of loneliness, anxiety, or even identity crises. And yet, society often encourages this mask wearing. Social media is a perfect example. It promotes curated images, highlight reels, and filtered perfection. We compare ourselves not to real people, but to personas. And in doing so, we reinforce the belief that we must hide our flaws, pain, and complexity to be loved. This pressure to maintain a flawless persona can be exhausting, especially when it conflicts with who we truly are. Jung warned that identifying too closely with the persona leads to ego inflation or spiritual emptiness. You start to live for applause, not for authenticity. You make decisions based on what others expect, not what your soul desires. And you risk losing touch with your deeper feelings, your intuition, and your shadow. In Jung's words, the persona is a system of behavior, a kind of mask, designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other to conceal the true nature of the individual. So how do you know if you're trapped in your persona? Look for signs of emotional disconnection. Do you feel like people don't really know the real you? Do you struggle to express certain feelings or desires? Do you feel a pressure to always appear fine, strong, or successful, even when you're not? These may indicate that your persona is overdeveloped and your inner self is being silenced. The solution isn't to destroy the persona, it's to become conscious of it. Jung didn't say we should stop wearing masks altogether. He understood that the persona is necessary for social life, but he believed that you must know it's a mask. When you're aware of the role you're playing, you can choose when to wear it and when to take it off. Begin by observing your behavior in different social settings. Notice how your tone, posture, or emotions shift depending on who you're with. Ask yourself, who am I trying to be right now? Why? You may realize that your persona is trying to protect you from rejection, from judgment, from vulnerability. That's not something to fight, it's something to understand with compassion. As you become more aware of your persona, you'll start to reconnect with the parts of yourself it hides. Maybe there's a playful side that rarely comes out. Maybe you long to express deeper emotions but don't know how. These hidden parts are not flaws. They are your unlived potential, and bringing them into the light leads to wholeness. The journey of personal growth, Jung said, involves moving beyond the persona, not to reject it, but to go deeper. When you integrate your shadow and embrace your true feelings, the mask no longer defines you. You wear it when needed, but you're not confined to it. And in that moment of awareness, something beautiful happens. You stop performing and start living, not as a role, not as a brand, but as a full human being, messy, real, evolving, and free. What if you're not just one person, but many? Not in a disorderly way, but in a deeply natural and symbolic one. Carl Jung believed that within each of us live universal characters, ancient inherited patterns he called archetypes. These are not random personality traits, but powerful blueprints embedded in your unconscious mind. They influence how you see the world, how you behave, and even the life paths you're drawn to. Jung described archetypes as primordial images, symbols, and instincts shared by all humans. They're part of the collective unconscious, which means they aren't learned from experience or culture. You didn't invent the idea of a wise old man, a hero, or a mother figure. Those patterns already existed within you, shaped by thousands of years of human experience. Think of archetypes as inner actors playing roles in the grand theater of your psyche. They show up in your thoughts, dreams, decisions, and relationships, often without you even realizing it. You may feel torn between being the caretaker and the rebel, or attracted to someone who fits the role of the lover or mentor. These patterns are not accidental. They are archetypal energies rising from deep within you. Some of the most well-known archetypes Jung described include the hero, the part of you that strives to overcome challenges, prove your worth, and achieve greatness. It seeks purpose, but often faces trials that test your inner strength. The shadow, the hidden part of you that contains all you deny, repress, or dislike about yourself. The anima, animus, the inner feminine in men and inner masculine in women, which influence your emotional responses and relationships. The wise old man, woman, the voice of deep inner wisdom, intuition, and guidance. The child, representing innocence, curiosity, and new beginnings. The trickster, the mischievous, chaotic force that disrupts order to bring transformation. What's fascinating is how these archetypes often conflict with one another. You might feel pulled between the hero who wants to pursue greatness and the lover who wants connection and pleasure, or between the mother who nurtures others and the warrior who fights for independence. These tensions are not signs of confusion. They are signals that multiple archetypes are alive within you, each wanting to be heard. Jung believed that understanding and working with your archetypes is key to personal transformation. When you identify which ones are active in your life and which are being ignored, you gain insight into your motivations, choices, and emotional struggles. For example, someone constantly overworking might be trapped in the hero archetype while suppressing their lover, leading to emotional burnout and loneliness. Another person might be stuck in the child archetype, avoiding responsibility and fearing adult decisions. These patterns don't just shape your psychology, they shape your entire life narrative. Think about your favorite books, films, and myths. The characters you resonate with are likely reflections of your own active archetypes. That's why stories feel so personal. They speak directly to the symbolic structures within you. But archetypes aren't destiny, they're potential. You're not stuck in one pattern forever. You can evolve. That's the beauty of Jung's idea. Archetypes are guides, not prisons. You can learn to balance them, call on the right one when needed, and grow by integrating those you've ignored. One of Jung's key goals in therapy was to help people recognize which archetypes were dominating them unconsciously, and which ones needed to be consciously integrated. For example, someone overly identified with the caretaker might need to develop their warrior to set boundaries. A person overwhelmed by the trickster might need the grounding of the sage or hero. The ultimate path, Jung believed, was not to become a single archetype, but to engage in a lifelong process of individuation, becoming whole by integrating all parts of yourself, including your archetypal energies. So next time you feel stuck, ask yourself, which archetype is showing up right now, and which one have I been ignoring? This inner dialogue can reveal deep truths and lead to real transformation. You are not a flat, fixed identity. You are a living mosaic of timeless forces, each one with its own wisdom, strengths, and lessons. By learning to recognize and work with your archetypes, you begin to live with more clarity, depth, and authenticity. Because these archetypes aren't just stories, they're you, waiting to be awakened. Carl Jung believed that every human psyche contains both masculine and feminine qualities, regardless of gender. He called this inner duality the Anima and Animus, the feminine side of a man's psyche and the masculine side of a woman's psyche. These archetypes are not about gender roles or physical traits, but about psychic balance, emotional depth, and spiritual growth. They represent your inner opposite and your bridge to the unconscious. Let's begin with the anima. In a man's psyche, the anima represents emotionality, intuition, creativity, receptiveness, and connection to the inner world. It often shows up in dreams or fantasies as a feminine figure, sometimes nurturing and wise, other times mysterious and chaotic. When a man rejects his anima, he may become emotionally disconnected, overly rational, or fear vulnerability. He may project the anima onto women, idealizing or demonizing them instead of seeing them as whole individuals. Likewise, the animus appears in a woman's psyche as her inner masculine energy. It symbolizes logic, assertiveness, courage, and action. In dreams, the animus may appear as a strong male figure, a hero, a critic, or a spiritual guide. When a woman is unconscious of her animus, she may struggle to assert herself, make independent decisions, or act with confidence. Or she may project her animus onto men, expecting them to fulfill roles that actually belong to her own inner strength. What's key here is projection. When you haven't integrated your anima or animus, you unconsciously look for that missing piece in others. This is why romantic attraction can be so intense. It's not just about the other person, it's about meeting your own unconscious self through them. That's also why relationships can become turbulent once the projection fades. You're no longer seeing your anima or animus, you're seeing the real person, flaws and all. Jung saw this inner polarity as essential for psychological wholeness. A man who integrates his anima becomes more emotionally aware, creative, and attuned to his inner life. He gains empathy, softness, and depth without losing his strength. A woman who integrates her animus becomes more grounded, decisive, and expressive of her will. She finds her voice and takes action without losing her warmth or care. This balance is what Jung called the sacred marriage, a symbolic union between the inner masculine and feminine. When the anima and animus work together, they don't cancel each other out. They complete each other. You become more whole, more balanced, and more capable of deep love and insight. One powerful way to engage with the anima or animus is through dream work. Pay attention to recurring male or female figures in your dreams. Are they helpful or threatening? Gentle or forceful? What qualities do they express that you might be missing in your waking life? These dream characters often carry messages from the unconscious, messages about who you could become if you embrace the full range of your inner life. Another way is to look at your emotional triggers in relationships. Do you find yourself overly dependent, controlling, critical, or submissive? Do you idealize others or feel deeply wounded when they fail to meet your unspoken expectations? These patterns often stem from unintegrated inner opposites. The work is not about fixing the other person. It's about reclaiming those traits within yourself. Jung believed that modern society has a deep imbalance here. Men are often pressured to suppress their emotional side, while women are discouraged from expressing power and independence. This cultural conditioning blocks both the anima and animus from developing fully. To grow, we must move beyond stereotypes and reclaim the full spectrum of our inner selves. Importantly, integrating the anima or animus doesn't mean becoming more like the opposite gender. It means becoming more human. Emotional intelligence is not just for women. Rational strength is not just for men. We all carry both, and when we bring them into harmony, we unlock new dimensions of creativity, relationship, and purpose. The anima and animus are not just psychological concepts, they are living energies within you. They influence your dreams, your choices, your attractions, and your struggles. When you begin to notice and engage with them consciously, your inner world becomes richer, and your outer life begins to reflect that depth. In Jung's view, this integration isn't a luxury, it's a requirement for individuation, the process of becoming your true self. You are not meant to be half a person, you are meant to become whole, and that wholeness begins when you turn inward and embrace the opposite within. Carl Jung described individuation as the most important journey a person can undertake, the process of becoming your authentic, whole self. It's not just about self-improvement or achieving external goals. Individuation is a deep inner transformation that involves bringing together all parts of your psyche, the conscious and unconscious, the light and the dark, the persona and the shadow, the anima and animus, into a balanced and unified whole. Imagine your psyche as a fragmented puzzle. Individuation is the ongoing work of fitting those pieces together, discovering hidden parts of yourself, and healing the splits that have formed over time. This process allows you to move beyond the masks you wear and the unconscious patterns that control you, so you can live with greater freedom, creativity, and authenticity. Jung saw individuation as a lifelong journey. It rarely happens in a straight line. Instead, it's a spiral of growth, where you confront challenges, gain insights, and integrate new aspects of yourself again and again. Sometimes this means facing painful truths, the parts of yourself you've denied or feared. Other times, it's about embracing your gifts and potential that you've overlooked. One of the key challenges on the path of individuation is confronting the shadow. Because the shadow holds everything you've rejected, it can feel scary or shameful to face. But Jung taught that avoiding the shadow leads to projection, blaming others for your own flaws, and keeps you stuck in repetitive emotional patterns. Individuation requires courage, the courage to look honestly at yourself, accept your imperfections, and integrate them as part of your whole being. Alongside shadow work, individuation involves becoming aware of your persona, understanding which masks you wear to fit in or protect yourself, and learning when to let them go. It means peeling back layers of social conditioning to find your true voice beneath the roles you play. Integrating the anima and animus is also a vital part of this journey. When these inner opposites come into balance, you gain emotional richness and inner strength, which deepen your capacity for relationships and self-expression. Dreams play a special role in individuation. Jung called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. Through symbols and narratives, dreams communicate with you in a language your waking mind often doesn't understand. Paying attention to recurring images, characters, and emotions in dreams can reveal what parts of yourself need healing, growth, or integration. The process of individuation also often involves connecting with archetypes, those timeless, universal figures living within you. By recognizing the archetypes that guide your behavior and life story, you gain insight into your inner conflicts and strengths. You learn to call on the archetypes you need, whether it's the hero for courage, the wise old man for guidance, or the child for renewal. Jung emphasized that individuation is not about becoming perfect or fixed. It's about becoming whole, which means accepting change, contradictions, and complexity within yourself. It's about living authentically, even when that means being vulnerable or misunderstood by others. This journey also has a spiritual dimension. Individuation often leads to a sense of connectedness to something larger than yourself, a feeling of unity with the cosmos, nature, or the divine. Jung believed this spiritual awakening is a natural outcome of embracing your true self. Practically speaking, individuation can look like many things: therapy, meditation, journaling, creative work, or simply paying attention to your inner life. It requires patience and self-compassion because growth often comes through struggle and confusion before clarity emerges. In modern life, the path of individuation is more important than ever. We live in a world full of distractions, expectations, and pressures to conform. The pressure to perform a certain way, look a certain way, or achieve certain goals can make it easy to lose sight of who you truly are beneath the surface. But individuation reminds us that your deepest value lies not in external success, but in your authentic being. When you dare to embark on this journey, you reclaim your power, creativity, and joy. To sum up, individuation is the process of becoming yourself, fully, deeply, and courageously. It means embracing every part of you, even the parts you once feared. It means living a life that reflects your true essence, not just the expectations of others. And it means walking a path of continual growth, where every challenge is an invitation to discover who you really are. In the end, individuation is the journey home, to the person you were always meant to be. Every one of us carries a hidden part deep within, the shadow, a realm of our personality that we often reject, deny, or ignore. Carl Jung introduced the concept of the shadow as the unconscious side of ourselves that holds all the traits, desires, and emotions we consider unacceptable or shameful. It's not evil, as many misunderstand it, but rather the parts of ourselves we hide from the world, and sometimes even from ourselves. The shadow is like a dark closet where we stuff all those feelings and impulses that don't fit with the image we want to show. Maybe it's anger, jealousy, greed, selfishness, fear, or vulnerability. Because society, family, or culture often teaches us what's good and bad, we learn to push away the parts that don't align with those standards. But pushing these parts away doesn't make them disappear. They just lurk beneath the surface, influencing us in ways we don't realize. One of the most important truths Jung revealed is that everyone has a shadow, no exceptions. It's part of being human. But what makes the shadow dangerous is when it's denied or projected onto others. For example, if you refuse to acknowledge your own anger, you might see others as angry or hostile instead, and that can cause misunderstandings, conflicts, or feelings of victimization. The shadow also affects our relationships. When unconscious, it can lead to repeated patterns of behavior that sabotage happiness. You might find yourself attracted to people who trigger your deepest fears or insecurities, or you might unconsciously act out negative traits you despise in others. These patterns aren't accidents. They are the shadow trying to get noticed, forcing you to confront what you've hidden. However, Jung emphasized that shadow work, the process of becoming aware and integrating your shadow, is essential for personal growth and wholeness. Embracing the shadow doesn't mean giving in to destructive behaviors. It means recognizing these hidden parts, understanding their origins, and transforming their energy. When you face your shadow, you begin to uncover powerful resources: courage, creativity, authenticity, and self-awareness. The shadow often holds your repressed talents and qualities. For example, someone who denies their anger might also be denying their personal power or the ability to stand up for themselves. Someone who hides their vulnerability might be cutting off deep emotional connection. Shadow work requires honesty and bravery. It means looking into the mirror and accepting not just your strengths, but also your flaws and contradictions. It's uncomfortable, but necessary. Jung believed that by integrating the shadow, you reduce its unconscious influence and reclaim those lost energies in a conscious, healthy way. A practical step toward shadow work is to notice your emotional reactions, especially intense ones. When you feel unusually angry, jealous, or fearful, ask yourself, is this reaction about something inside me I'm not willing to face? Journaling your feelings, meditating on difficult emotions, or working with a therapist can help uncover these hidden layers. Another way the shadow manifests is through dreams. Often, shadow figures or frightening symbols appear in dreams, trying to communicate what your waking mind avoids. Paying attention to these messages is an invitation to self-discovery. Jung also saw the shadow as a gateway to authenticity and creativity. When you integrate the shadow, you break free from societal masks and become more real and spontaneous. You become less controlled by fear of judgment and more connected to your true feelings. Moreover, embracing the shadow can deepen your compassion for others. When you recognize your own flaws and struggles, you become less judgmental and more understanding. You see that everyone carries a shadow, and that makes us all more human. In essence, the shadow is both a challenge and a gift. It challenges you to confront your unconscious fears and denied parts, but it also gifts you with self-knowledge, inner power, and a richer, more nuanced identity. Ignoring the shadow leaves you fragmented and reactive. Embracing it leads to healing and integration. It's a key step on the path of individuation, helping you move toward a fuller, freer version of yourself. So, rather than fearing your shadow, invite it to the light. Listen to its messages, meet your hidden self with kindness and curiosity. In doing so, you take a bold step toward the true freedom Carl Jung believed was possible, the freedom to be whole. Imagine you're attending a party. You smile, laugh, and behave in ways that make others feel comfortable around you. You might be polite, confident, or charming, but is this the real you, or is it a role you're playing? Carl Jung called this social mask the persona, the identity we present to the outside world. The word persona originally comes from Latin meaning mask. It's the face you show to society, shaped by expectations, culture, family, and your own desires to fit in or succeed. Everyone has a persona, and it's necessary for functioning in social life. It helps you navigate relationships, jobs, and social roles by adapting to what's expected. However, the persona is not the whole self. It's a constructed identity, often designed to protect your vulnerable inner self from judgment, rejection, or harm. It may emphasize your strengths while hiding your weaknesses, or show a confident front while concealing anxiety or insecurity. The problem arises when people become too identified with their persona, when the mask becomes their entire identity. This can lead to feelings of emptiness, disconnection, or even a crisis of identity, because the persona is only a part of the psyche, not the total person. You might feel like you're acting in a play, but don't know who you are when the curtains close. Jung warned that over-identification with the persona can block individuation, the process of becoming whole. If you are constantly trying to maintain a certain image, you may suppress your true feelings, desires, or parts of your personality that don't fit the mask. Over time, this can create inner tension and conflict. For example, someone might have a persona of being strong and independent, but hides feelings of loneliness or vulnerability. Another person might present as successful and confident, while secretly struggling with self-doubt. This gap between the persona and the authentic self can cause anxiety, depression, or a sense of living a lie. Understanding your persona means recognizing which roles you play in different areas of life, work, family, friendships, and noticing when those roles start to feel limiting or exhausting. It's normal to have different faces in different settings, but it becomes unhealthy when you lose touch with what's genuine underneath. Jung also saw the persona as a form of social adaptation that must eventually be transcended on the journey to self-realization. To grow, you need to loosen your attachment to the mask and explore who you are beneath it. This doesn't mean abandoning social roles or pretending to be vulnerable all the time. Rather, it means balancing your persona with your inner self, being able to show the mask when needed, but also allowing your true feelings, thoughts, and desires to emerge. One practical way to explore your persona is through self-reflection or therapy. Ask yourself, what parts of me do I hide from others? Which roles do I feel pressured to perform? When do I feel most authentic? Journaling about these questions can help you see where you're wearing a mask and where you're showing your real self. Artistic expression, meditation, or spending time alone can also help you reconnect with your inner world beyond the persona. The goal is to develop enough self-awareness to switch fluidly between your social roles and your authentic being without losing yourself. In relationships, understanding the persona can improve intimacy. When you let down your mask with trusted people, you invite deeper connection and vulnerability. At the same time, recognizing when others are behind their own persona can foster empathy and patience. Ultimately, the persona is a necessary but partial part of who you are. It serves as a bridge between your inner world and society, but it's not your true identity. By becoming aware of your persona and learning to balance it with your authentic self, you open the door to greater freedom, self-acceptance, and psychological health. Jung's wisdom here reminds us, don't be afraid to take off the mask sometimes. The world needs the real you, not just the role you play. Carl Jung introduced a revolutionary idea that goes beyond the personal unconscious, the collective unconscious. Unlike the personal unconscious, which contains memories and experiences unique to you, the collective unconscious is a deeper layer of the mind shared by all humans. It's like an inherited reservoir of knowledge, emotions, and symbols passed down through generations, influencing us without our conscious awareness. Think of the collective unconscious as a vast, invisible ocean beneath the surface of your individual mind. It holds universal patterns, myths, and images, what Jung called archetypes, that appear across cultures, religions, and history. These archetypes are not learned. They are innate structures of the psyche shaping how we perceive the world and ourselves. For example, many cultures have myths about heroes, wise elders, tricksters, and great mothers. These recurring figures represent archetypes living in the collective unconscious. They show up in our dreams, art, and stories, guiding us in subtle ways. The collective unconscious connects you to the human family in a profound way. It explains why people from vastly different backgrounds can have similar dreams or emotional experiences. It also suggests that you're part of something larger than your personal story, an ongoing human saga that stretches back to ancient times. One key function of the collective unconscious is to provide psychic resources for growth and survival. Archetypes act like internal guides or templates, helping you navigate challenges, develop your identity, and find meaning. For instance, when you face a difficult decision, the hero archetype may inspire courage. When you seek wisdom, the wise old man archetype may appear in dreams or imagination. However, because these forces are unconscious, they can also cause inner conflicts. Sometimes archetypal energies clash with your conscious desires or social norms, leading to confusion or emotional turmoil. Becoming aware of these influences helps you understand why you may feel drawn to certain stories, symbols, or behaviors. Jung believed that modern life often suppresses the collective unconscious. With rapid technological changes and cultural shifts, many people feel disconnected from their deeper roots and meaning. This disconnection can lead to feelings of emptiness, alienation, or spiritual crisis. Engaging with the collective unconscious can be a powerful step toward healing and wholeness. This can happen through dream analysis, mythology, art, or meditation. By exploring archetypal images in your dreams or creative work, You tap into this deeper wisdom. For example, if you dream of a great flood, it might connect to the archetype of destruction and renewal, a universal symbol of transformation found in many cultures. Recognizing these symbols helps you interpret your unconscious messages and apply them to your life. The collective unconscious also plays a role in cultural phenomena. Trends in art, literature, and religion often reflect shifts in archetypal patterns within society. When a collective archetype becomes dominant, it shapes the spirit of the age, influencing how people think and feel on a broad scale. On a personal level, becoming aware of the collective unconscious can expand your sense of identity. You're not just a separate individual, but part of a timeless human story. This awareness can bring comfort and perspective, especially during times of crisis or change. Jung's concept challenges the idea that the mind is only shaped by personal experience. Instead, it reveals a profound interconnectedness, a shared psychic heritage that binds all humanity. In summary, the collective unconscious is the hidden well of human experience that influences your dreams, feelings, and behaviors. It contains the archetypes, universal symbols, and themes that guide your inner journey. By exploring this hidden dimension, you gain access to deeper wisdom and a sense of belonging that transcends your individual life. Understanding the collective unconscious invites you to see yourself not just as an isolated being, but as part of a vast, ancient tapestry, one woven from the shared experiences and myths of all humanity. This realization opens the door to greater self-awareness, creativity, and spiritual growth, helping you navigate your life with richer meaning and connection. Carl Jung introduced two fascinating concepts that reveal a profound truth about the human psyche: the Anima and Animus. These are the unconscious feminine side within a man, Anima, and the unconscious masculine side within a woman, Animus. Jung believed that every person carries both masculine and feminine energies inside, regardless of their biological sex, and that integrating these inner opposites is essential for psychological wholeness. The Anima represents qualities traditionally associated with femininity, such as emotion, intuition, receptivity, and nurturing, while the Animus embodies masculine traits like logic, assertiveness, rationality, and strength. These are not stereotypes, but deep psychic structures that influence how we relate to ourselves and others. For men, the Anima often appears in dreams or fantasies as a mysterious woman figure who guides or challenges them. For women, the Animus may show up as a wise, authoritative man or a group of men representing different aspects of inner strength or intellect. These figures symbolize the parts of ourselves that are often unconscious or underdeveloped. Why does this matter? Because if the Anima or Animus remains unconscious or repressed, it can cause inner conflicts or distort how we experience relationships. For example, a man disconnected from his Anima might struggle to express emotions or empathize with others, leading to coldness or isolation. A woman who hasn't integrated her Animus might find it hard to assert herself or trust her inner voice. Jung believed that encountering and integrating your Anima or Animus is a vital step in the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. This integration means recognizing, accepting, and embracing these opposite energies within you, allowing them to enrich your personality and balance your conscious identity. When integrated, the Anima and Animus bring a richer emotional life, creativity, and deeper understanding of others. You become more adaptable, sensitive, and self-aware. Men may develop a greater capacity for tenderness and intuition. Women may gain confidence and clarity in decision-making. This inner balancing also affects how you relate to others. By understanding your Anima or Animus, you reduce projections, the tendency to see your inner opposite as a flawed or idealized figure in others. Instead of projecting unrealistic expectations onto partners or friends, you can relate more authentically and compassionately. Practical ways to work with your anima or animus include paying attention to your dreams, creative impulses, and emotional reactions. You might notice recurring themes involving the opposite gender or qualities you resist or idealize. Reflecting on these can provide clues to your inner dynamics. Art, journaling, or therapy can help explore and integrate these energies. For example, writing a dialogue between your conscious self and your anima or animus can reveal hidden insights and promote inner harmony. Jung also emphasized that integrating the anima and animus is not about erasing gender identity or conforming to social roles. Instead, it's about embracing the full spectrum of human qualities within yourself, freeing you from rigid patterns and allowing for greater psychological flexibility. In a broader sense, this integration supports emotional maturity and spiritual growth. It helps you transcend dualities and oppositions, moving toward a more unified and balanced self. In conclusion, the anima and animus represent the inner feminine and masculine energies within everyone. Integrating these opposites is key to unlocking your full potential and living authentically. By embracing your inner anima or animus, you gain access to deeper creativity, emotional richness, and relational harmony. This profound balance is one of Carl Jung's most powerful insights into the complexity and beauty of the human psyche, showing that true wholeness comes from honoring all parts of yourself, even those you might not expect.